Hello, Flat Earth researchers, debaters and debunkers. My thoughts on the Big Bang. All but a few cultures and religions preach mythological stories of creation. And most people in those cultures accept the stories as their truth, in place of any other plausible answers to the esoteric questions about the how, when and why of our existence. The Big Bang theory of a universe that burst into existence out of nowhere is the creation story of the heliocentric adherents to scientism, a religion just like any other, with creation stories and myths based on the culture's collective outlook and environment, which in the case of the heliocentrist is based on the science of making calculations and predictions that are really nothing more than being able to tell the time by the sun, moon and stars. Anything assumed beyond that is simply rhetoric, philosophy and faith. All advocates of the heliocentric model throughout history are theoretical physicists, writing down thought experiments like fairy tales in the language of mathematics. They make wild assumptions about before and after the assumed Big Bang, presupposing, of course, without any real way of knowing that there was a Big Bang in the first place, all the while claiming to be unbiased because they are doing science. But the Big Bang is just a fairy tale. The theory does not in any way have any actual truth to it, nothing that any observation or measurement has ever established as an undeniable fact. Yet the hypothesis is revered and taught as being indisputable, even though they know that they are only talking about models and theories, not reality. At best, the theorists have merely established consensus on a fictitious point of time at which the universe supposedly began in order to create mathematical models, based on our interpretation of finite time in the material world. That moment of the birth of the universe is referred to as time equals zero. Scientists have absolutely no idea, even in their wildest theories, of what occurred just before or just after their theoretical Big Bang, marking the beginning of time for their particular model. Nor do they have any clue whatsoever what happened at the time they call time equals zero. They have no physics or models or practical examples to even begin explaining or demonstrating it. In fact, the only science in this respect is the predictive nature of what we see happening in the sky to tell the time. Time that is consistently seasonal and cyclical, and has been recorded for millennia without any need to make any assumptions about the shape of the Earth. Yet, despite the infinitely cyclical nature of what we observe and has been observed for thousands of years, they force themselves to follow a concept of linear time and evolution, as that is the fundamental foundation of the Big Bang model of the universe, an assumption that there is a beginning and end point, which must be defined as the cornerstone for explaining everything else in the model. And given the material world in which we exist, of birth, life, death and decay, all we can ever experience and observe is life with a beginning and end, without any knowledge of what, if anything, lies beyond these blips of earthly experiences as individuals and as a collective. Advocates of this linear timeline of evolution proudly and stoically believe that we are at the pinnacle of human achievement and that our understanding of the universe is unrivaled compared to our alleged ancestors of inferior intelligence, despite mountains of evidence that many advanced civilizations have come and gone before us, with empires rising and falling throughout a history that remains a total mystery. So while most of us living today cannot trace our diverse ancestry any further back in time than a few generations or a few hundred years, the theoretical physicists have somehow sussed out the family tree of our evolution as a species in a single 18 billion year timeline that elevates us from amoeba and algae in a primordial soup to becoming bipedal sentient beings with dreams of spreading our seed across the cosmos. Attempting to define everything as one single thing or a singularity is a common trait among these thought experimenters seeking to simplify creation in mathematical terms, and then they can appear to have the ultimate answer. They assume that all the matter in the universe was compact into an infinitesimally small dot, which again is an essential assumption for the model based on the man-made concept of linear time, not a known or observable fact. Because of a lack of any substantial knowledge and the assumption that the current laws of physics, according to them, didn't exist before, during, and immediately after their theoretical Big Bang, they speculate that the universe began expanding faster than the speed of light. There is nothing to explain or presuppose the cause of the assumed expansion of the universe, so they clutch at straws by inventing even more bizarre theoretical physics that are scapegoats for not having any real answers to fit their presuppositions. So apart from these known unknowns about how or why the universe burst into life spontaneously, where did that tiny dot of a universe begin life? They have an incomplete model of time spanning billions of years, but cannot identify a place where the universe began. For something to manifest, it has to occur in some kind of space. So where is the universe located? Does anyone have the GPS coordinates for the proverbial womb in which the universe was conceived and born in a split second? No, they only have a theory of when, not where. Besides that, where did all the matter, mass, gas and water come from to be compressed into a tiny dot in the first place? And what forces caused this alleged compression of the entire universe, which must have been somewhere and taking up space for it to then become compressed? This inconceivably fast flash of instant expansion also assumes that there was such a high concentration of energy at time equals zero to merge four fundamental forces of conventional physics into a single unknown force with its own exotic laws, which so far they have not the ability to fathom. In their expanding universe model, they have to assume that the four forces that are pillars of cosmic consideration in today's fields of science did not exist before or just after the time of their Big Bang, and only manifested afterwards. In essence, they are saying that the laws of physics they abide by were created along with the creation of the universe, but they still don't know what those forces really are. They have labelled them as electromagnetism, gravity, the strong force and the weak force, to describe the exquisite balance of nature as forces that are violently pulling and pushing against each other in a miraculous equilibrium, always teetering on either collapsing in on itself or blowing up. And how they love to tinker with it to see if it will indeed blow up, forgetting that their face will probably get ripped off in the process. They say the edge of the observable universe is where the traces of the beginnings of space and time are found, and believe they are looking back in time, but not from a centre point, because according to them, the universe is expanding in all directions. The expansion is again just a necessary assumption for the theoretical physicists, because they are thought experimenting with a model that has a beginning with a Big Bang. The theory is upheld with the Hubble constant, an unverifiable assumption based on pre-existing theories that a shift in light towards the red end of the spectrum, or redshift, emitted from galaxies seen from Earth means the farther away the galaxy is from us, the faster it is travelling away from us. But you could argue that we see redshift every time the sun sets in a glorious amber glow just a few miles away. It doesn't mean we are looking across trillions of miles and light years of infinite space. Other efforts to measure the assumed age and theoretical expansion of the universe have forced the theorists to come up with even more assumptions of invisible particles of dark matter, as well as a mysterious repulsive force called dark energy. Ultimately, we reach a paradox of assuming a universe that must have an edge as it expands, but cannot know or even perceive what lies beyond that edge, while also assuming that the universe is infinite, meaning it isn't actually expanding to fill another space. These contradictions and the inability to truly know what is or isn't moving are parcelled up as equations to describe relativity. And when these dangerously ideological theoretical physicists actually do real physics, they do it with particle accelerators, like the Large Hadron Collider, creating violent explosions from which they aim to become creators of their own universes by giving birth to matter and mass from the energy expelled in the void from the most violent explosions man could possibly make. They claim that smashing particles together in a collider generates the same kind of high temperatures that they assume were present a fraction of a second after the theoretical Big Bang. Essentially, they are trying to manifest matter with the belief that life is born out of destruction, an illogical and unscientific idea that totally contradicts reality, as they smash together the smallest particles they can find to shatter them into even smaller particles with a destructive force that results in temperatures soaring to 13 trillion degrees Fahrenheit. That temperature is not necessarily heat. They are talking about the speed at which the particle shards explode as they are smashed to smithereens in head-on collisions. Ironically, they know that their methods of madness are destructive, not constructive. The statue of Vishnu outside the CERN facility is an obvious clue to their mindset. They are like kids that have just discovered the volatile nature of mixing fertilizer and sugar to make fireworks and bombs, getting bolder and more carried away in their attempts for a bigger and more spectacular effect that will assuredly blow up in their faces eventually. So where has this pursuit of discovery out of destruction while defining our existence in a single equation and evolutionary timeline taken us? And perhaps more importantly, where is it taking us? The nihilistic notion of order out of chaos from a Big Bang is a creation story intrinsic to the heliocentric model and the Copernican idea supported by Newtonian equations that the Earth is another planet with a molten core that formed from dust particles randomly gathering into spinning balls circling a massive sun. This also heralded a new age of metric measurements and a gold standard stamped on the rest of the world by the British Empire. The new ton metric system for measuring weight, temperature, density, distance, dimensions and volume are useful universal descriptions to communicate mathematical concepts and theories in the real world, as well as for abstract models, which is why many assume that the mathematical geniuses of geometry have somehow given us real answers and reasoning for a nonsensical Big Bang creation story that would appear to mean the widespread belief in spinning spaceballs is somehow derived from scientific fact. But nothing could be further from the true nature of reality, which has been abandoned and ignored by mainstream institutionalized science in favor of unprovable ideas. The heliocentric model is nothing more than an abstract, man-made construct of time for the Gregorian solar calendar, to which we are forced to comply against the true time of nature and the seasons, as well as our own individual biological clocks. The globe in its heliocentric model has been conceived to do only one thing: to be an artificial construct of time to standardize our existence and lives in a global mechanism of corporate governance, a one-size-fits-all solution for controlling humanity. It is simply the clock and the calendar we follow for global commerce and consumerism. It is a fictitious world of stock markets, mortgages, debt, insurance bonds, futures, control of resources, and indeed control of our bodies and minds, to the extent that we are just human resources to be plundered and tossed aside when we become too costly to keep. Meanwhile, most of us continue to trust the institutionalized guardians of our culture's creation story and place our lives in the hands of scientism's preachers, professors, propaganda merchants and politicians with their corporate scientific advisors, pushing agendas for the soothsayers of the globalist cabal playing God. But this is a message of hope. It's not all doom and gloom. The future is bright. As the veil of our indoctrination into the global culture of scientism is lifted and increasing numbers of individuals begin to see the way the world really works, as the globalists themselves reveal their agenda to control hearts and minds and money. Armed with this knowledge of the truth right in front of our eyes is the ability to get up and leave the cult any time you like. When we are free from any assumptions about our past, about who we are, and other people's plans for our future, then we are free to experience life, the universe, and everything on our own terms, and decide our own fate and karma. Thank you very much.